Welcome one and all to a very special day here at The Damage Report. Not only a big old Tuesday show, but an election day show. Yes, everyone was so into the midterm elections that the country decided to do it again, just like a month later. So we'll be talking more about that in a little bit. The show is special for another reason though. We're joined by a special guest who, if I heard correctly, is now the acting executive director for Gen Z for Change. Elise, Joshi, welcome to The Damage Report.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
We're very excited to have you here. We spoke, I'm gonna say like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, but we enjoyed the talk, and so we wanted to talk politics with you some more. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
For people who might not be familiar with your organization, you want to tell us a little bit about what Gen Z for Change gets up to?
Totally. Gen Z for Change is a coalition of Gen Z activists that are based on social media. So we use social media coalitions and like the creators that want to make a difference using their platforms, but also digital tools and code, and just leveraging our strategy to make an actual difference on the ground in coordination with on the ground movements. And we've been just having a blast this entire year.
Awesome. I love to see the organization doing the work that it does. And having people involved in this that are enjoying the process, that's a nice boost. We've had some rough years in recent years, but yeah, this year hasn't been quite as bad. I mean, those midterms sure could have been worse, I guess.
Oh, exactly. And Gen Z is a large reason why it didn't go as badly as it could have.
Exactly. Hopefully we'll get that same sort of effect later on today in Georgia. And speaking of that, in just a few minutes, dear viewers, we will be talking about this last run up to the runoff election. We've just got 1 day left to find out if Herschel Walker is gonna be a senator. I'm on the edge of my seat. We've got some previews of possible Supreme Court rulings, inappropriate jokes being told by justices as well. We've got cross burnings, police chiefs resigning, and that's just in the first hour. Stick around for the aftermath to find out what people who made the regrettable decision to get Kanye West's face tattooed on their body are now thinking about the decision, as well as Tucker Carlson making the fact-free case that the FBI is trying to control your brain on Twitter or something. I don't know. All that's coming up. In advance of that, please hit the like button and share the stream so that people know we're live. And if you want to reach out to either myself or Elise with, you can do that via tweets, super chats, comments, all that. We'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Elise, are you ready to start the show?
Hell yeah.
Okay, let's do it. In fact, let's jump into it with a bit of fun with this.
I told you early on that they said there was peace through strength, and our strength is our great military. But now they're bringing pronouns into our military. They're bringing wokeness into our military. I don't even know what the heck is a pronoun. I can tell you that, and I'm sick and tired of this pronoun stuff. What I want our military men and women to do is to be at war fighting.
Okay. So, not only does Herschel Walker not know what a pronoun is, but he's been using that line for like months now. No one's told him. He hasn't Googled it. And now those pronouns that he doesn't understand have made their way into the military. There were no pronouns before. Nobody had any idea what to refer to each other as. And anyway, it's all a distraction, everybody. As Herschel Walker so eloquently put it, he doesn't want pronouns in the military. He wants you to be at war fighting or something. That's a direct quote. I don't know what it means, but to be fair, neither does he. That is the closing argument effectively of Senate candidate Herschel Walker. It's not the dumbest thing he's said this week. Elise, what do you think?
The fact that Walker could still win is a very scary idea at this point. Despite the polls showing that Warnock is strong. But you know what? To me, I'm just gonna try and see this as something funny, because if the reality of what the midterm elections showed last month is that Trump-backed ridiculous candidates like Walker are not winning. And so I'm hoping that Georgia voters feel the same way as Pennsylvania voters in not trying to elect these ridiculous candidates. But it's pretty wild.
That are ridiculous in so many ways, and the many lies and the many scandals, and even when they start to talk about something that's sort of tangentially related to substance, like there he's talking about what our focus, I guess, should be in our military. I don't even know what he wants. I don't know what he is talking about when he talks about pronouns in the military. I don't know if he wants to set up some sort of don't ask, don't tell your pronouns thing. I honestly don't know. But I want to ask you a question because we've been talking a lot this year about Herschel Walker. He could well become a senator. And I want to know, in your opinion, which is a bigger indictment on the American people? Having elected Donald Trump president, or if they elect Herschel Walker to the Senate? Which is more embarrassing for our country?
It's damn close. I couldn't even tell you. I think Herschel Walker is a lot. The fact that Trump backs Herschel Walker kind of amplifies Herschel Walker. So I would say that Walker is definitely more embarrassing.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and certainly they are tied together. They're very similar candidates in a lot of different ways. I would honestly say I agree. I think, look, I despise Trump 1,000 times more. He's done a lot more damage, will continue to, even if Herschel Walker makes it in the Senate. But all of the things that make Trump terrible, I get why many Republicans love that stuff. He's horrible to appeal to them. Walker is, he's not qualified in the same way that Trump wasn't qualified, but he's worse at doing it. He should be being punished by the voters more. Donald Trump at least was compelling. Herschel Walker is just a hot mess. That's all he is. And Trump obviously had any number of different scandals. I mean, there's no way I could remember the names of all of the women who've credibly accused him of sexual harassment and sexual assault. But Herschel Walker, like, the abortion hypocrisy and everything, it's so embarrassing. We'll have to see. As of right now, though, I did want to update people on what it's looking like as we head into the actual voting. We're of course not in the first day of voting. Thankfully, as of right now, at least Georgia does allow some early voting. And on Friday, that was the last day of early voting. Over 350,000 people cast ballots. That makes the total early vote 1.8 million. That's above previous records that have been set in 2018 and 2016. So beating another midterm election, that's already impressive. But beating early voting in 2016, that was a presidential election. It was a presidential election a lot of people were really interested in since Trump was the candidate. So this at least shows that a lot of people seem to be invested in the outcome of this. I would guess, although I can't prove, that probably benefits Warnock, but what do you think?
Oh yeah, I completely agree. There seems to be an energy against Walker in the same way that people were against Trump in 2020. The messaging from his own son is clear enough that people just don't want this man to be elected. Warnock is an incredibly strong candidate. He has great values and great policy positions, but this is really an anti-Warnock vote, an anti-Walker vote than it. And I think that the increase in voter turnout is very similar to 2020 with Trump.
Okay, well, we're gonna see. I wanna dive a little bit more into the thought process of the possible Herschel Walker voters. So we've got more video from our reporter, Michael Shore, who's been traveling around Georgia, talking to voters at the rallies. Here's a bit of what they had to say.
In this case, we have a gentleman who's given his life to Christ for 25, 30 years in Raphael Warnock, running against someone who is the best runner ever in Georgia. Is there? How do you toe that line of who the more religious, the more Christian candidate is?
Well, I see Warnock as more of a charlatan than a man of God, personally.
It's a big difference. You just look at the last. Ralph Warnock, what he supports, stands for abortions, all the bad stuff. And Herschel Walker stands for life. That's a biggie. That's a biggie right there.
Well, I don't know any facts. So it's really hard for me to make any decisions.
Has he been honest enough for you on issues like abortion, on residents? There's reports that he's a Texas resident, things like that. But it sounds like he's been honest enough for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Today there was another report of a woman who said that she was forced to have an abortion, and this is an issue that he's been talking about quite a bit. How does that sit with you as a Republican Georgia voter?
As a Republican, it's called forgiveness, and we give everyone second and third chances.
Well, to be clear, not everyone. You give Republican Senate candidates second and third chances. You guys seem pretty clear on Raphael Warnock. I mean, not clear about what exactly he did that makes him a charlatan or a fake man of God. You just believe that without evidence. But even if you had the evidence, doesn't he merit forgiveness in the same way? Do you approach regular people, regular workers, those who transgress, who are not powerful, famous, rich Republicans? Do you give them second and third chances? Look, whenever we play videos like this, my goal is never, and I really try not to down on or mock the regular voters. They're just regular people. They're living their life. It's difficult. You can't put all of your time into politics or thinking about it. For me, they represent what the voters are like. And I like that there's some who will just say, I don't know any facts, so it's hard for me to decide. That's honest. It's actually reflective of a lot of people's experience, whether they understand it or not. But when you have these people saying like that Raphael Warnock is bad because he supports abortion and all the bad things, which is a stand-in for you not having anything else that you can cite there. But on the other hand, Herschel Walker supports life. When there are multiple abortion scandals around him, I kind of think you need to at least retreat from that argument. I'm not saying you need to vote for Raphael Warnock at that point, but clearly Herschel Walker does not stand for life. When he's pressuring women to have abortions, when his own son says that he beat him, when multiple domestic partners say that he threatened to kill them or threatened to kill himself if they didn't do what he wanted, if he has himself given speeches about being in a car driving to go murder someone, but only the voice of Jesus in his head stopped him from doing it, he stands for something. I don't think it's life. Elise, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's easy to understand why a lot of people in Georgia are easy to just, like cast aside the hypocrisy, because the GOP have been doing this for decades. And when it came to Trump, a week before the election, we had the scandal with, grab them by the, and you had Republican voters trying to justify that because, he was a populist and they wanted to reason things with themselves. And, having years of convincing yourself of this for GOP candidate after GOP candidate, it's really easy to just do it the next time another one comes around. And it's really sad that it keeps happening. And it's really sad that these candidates keep being platformed, and Tucker Carlson has no problem platforming these people and revering them as wonderful candidates. It's no surprise to me, honestly.
Yeah, platforming them, providing no critical coverage whatsoever. I mean, they don't need to mentally work through supporting a guy who has all these scandals because they never have to think about the scandals. If you've just been watching Fox News, you probably haven't even seen that much of Herschel Walker because honestly, they kind of want to keep it at arm's reach. But even when he's there, he's not even talking. He's being flanked by Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, who are doing the talking for him. And they will never even mention these scandals because they're not even pretending anymore to be an actual source for news. So I find what those voters that talked to Michael Shore said frustrating on an individual level, because I want us to all be better individually as well as collectively. I want us to be worthy of democracy and to be active participants in it. But I can't be that surprised or that angry at them individually, because how the hell are they supposed to get any of the information considering how much has been siloed away on social media and on cable news? Now, that said, there's a couple of other aspects I want to talk about on this. And again, I don't want to get too ahead of the results. Herschel Walker could win. Herschel Walker could leave today being set to become a senator. But there's already a little bit of pre-post-mortem happening on conservative media, particularly around one topic. Let's jump into this next video.
I'm interested to see whether the extent to which Republicans have learned lessons of the past and decided to really push early voting.
They should.
They have to.
So suddenly, early voting, mail-in voting, not necessarily the boogeyman that it was. They tried demonizing it for a couple election cycles on the right end. How did that work in 2020? And how did that work in the midterms? Not so good. It's kind of nice to be able to vote, to not have to rush out on an individual day where you might be busy, you might be working, there might be bad weather. It's kind of a good thing to give people a little bit of flexibility there. And many on the right had gone along with these attacks against mail-in voting because Donald Trump had done so. And we'll turn to some of the recent reiterating of that. But here's a little bit more of what Fox and Friends had to say about how the right might want to think again about attacking these practices.
A lesson of the last couple cycles is Democrats, largely using COVID emergency measures, know how to bank votes legally. They go at low propensity voters time and time again. And then Republicans count on election day to turn people out, which has a lot more variables for failure. So I'm sure the information's out there. We'll certainly learn in the postmortem.
Okay, so there's a lot there that is fascinating. First of all, it's not new. And it's not just because of COVID. There has been mail voting for decades. There's been early voting for a very, very long time. It's not banking votes, it's people voting. It's a democracy. And I love the relatively recently populist Fox News being like, look at them going for low propensity voting. That's not what democracy is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about us elites who always pay attention to politics and always turn out. How dare you bring new people into the practice? I thought that's what you guys thought Trump was doing, was being a voice for the voiceless conservative majority or whatever. Suddenly, it's a big issue. But I do agree with him. Maybe we should make voting easy to access, not just for Democrats, not just in blue states, but literally everywhere. Make it as easy as possible, and then let the chips fall where they may. Elise, what do you think?
Yeah, we can. The GOP are walking a fine line all the time between what they really think and trying to be populist. And oftentimes the mask will, come off, and they'll realize, and people will realize that, their intentions all along are to ensure that white, rich people are the ones making the decisions in this country. And ultimately, no matter what they say, that is their ultimate goal. And you know that in Georgia with the handful of polling places that are left. You know that with, the denial of the legitimacy of mail-in ballots. And even though they're recognizing it now, it's only because they're losing. And so this is the problem with the GOP. And we have to continue to recognize that they're trying to be populist, but ultimately, who are they representing?
Yeah, you're totally right about that being the only reason that they're changing. It's taken multiple cycles for them to sort of get that. They will only support changes, even changes that make 100% common sense when it would benefit them. That's why I know, like if ever demographic changes result in the Electoral College somehow benefiting the Democrats, which it's unlikely to ever do, then finally they'll become allies on wanting to get rid of it. But until then, I kind of doubt it. That said, good luck to the right on changing the base's view on mail-in ballots and early voting, since the guy who inspired so much suspicion of the practice and maybe cost the Republicans the 2 Georgia Senate seats in the last cycle, he doesn't seem to have changed his mind. He relatively recently bleated on Truth Social, remember, you can never have fair and free elections with mail-in ballots. Never, 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 won't and can't happen. If you're listening on the podcast, that was all in caps. I mean, why would you use some caps and some not capitalized? And he apparently liked that point so much that later on that same day, he rebleated it with never. It was a good point in his defense. You can never, ever trust an election that has mail-in ballots, which hasn't bothered him when he has routinely voted by mail himself, as we know that he does. And by the way, he did it in Florida, which allows mail-in and early voting. So I guess Ron DeSantis isn't legitimately reelected to become the governor, since you can never trust the votes if they do mail-in ballots, which they did there. And by the way, I just want to really quickly remind people that there is a big partisan gap on support for these things. Now, this doesn't necessarily translate to propensity to use these practices. You might not like mail-in ballots, but still use it if it's legal. That said, last year in April, Pew looked into a variety of different measures to make voting easier or harder. And there are huge gaps, like on automatically registering all eligible citizens to vote. Republicans approve that 38%, Democrats 82%. They just want artificial barriers to voting. So when you talk about something like making early in-person voting available for at least 2 weeks, it's 63 to 91 for the Democrats. That's a big gap. And in these close elections where the elections might be determined by 10,000 votes or 70,000 votes at the presidential level, we've seen multiple instances of that over the past few years. A 30-point gap in approval that could lose you elections, and they don't seem to get that. Although to our earlier point about, we were talking about Gen Z, on virtually every single one of these measures, there is a massive difference in how different generations look at these sort of things. So if you look at, for instance, making Election Day a national holiday, we'll bring up this chart. I mean, you can see all 4 of these here. These are different generation cohorts as you go down. It's pretty big, the effect that you can have in support or disapproval for these different measures. No, sorry, if you could advance to the last one, it'll show what I'm talking about there, the different cohorts. But anyway, look, I'm hoping that they do win over the base on this, Elise. I hope that what seems to be a clear preference among younger voters for easier access to voting wins out. I want it to be as simple as possible. I want 100% participation if we can get to it.
Yep. I mean, me too. But we're the most energized base that we've seen in a long time, and that is purely because we have been engaged since before we could vote, because we've been so aware of problem and crisis after crisis since we were kids. I mean, I grew up in the school shooting era. I grew up post 9/11. I grew up during, post Iraq, and watching us spend $2 trillion on that instead of maybe nationalized healthcare. We've seen people not be prioritized and instead profit being prioritized for a damn long time. And so that's the reason we want to be involved and have a national holiday and for us to go out and vote. But it's also the reason we're protesting. It's also the reason we're striking and unionizing our workplaces. This is just another metric that shows that we're energized to be involved.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that was clearly visible during the midterms. Hoping here in Georgia, it'll be clear too, that young voters are voting at high rates and also seem to understand what their vote means and vote accordingly. That said, I want to end with a little bit of fun. And to be fair, while we have been very critical perhaps of Herschel Walker, I do want to give you the perspective of someone who at least ostensibly supports him, although that message is going to be a little bit muddled. Here is a bit of Senator John Kennedy supporting Herschel Walker in the run up to the election.
High IQ stupid people, they're easy to recognize. They hate George Washington. They hate Thomas Jefferson. They hate Dr. Zeus, and they hate Mr. Potato Head.
And he takes that personally because is that actually Mr. Potato Head? I'm honestly not sure. It certainly doesn't look like a senator to me, despite that being his official title. That is John Kennedy using the limited time he has to support a candidate in the run up to a runoff election in which very few national high profile Republicans have been willing to go and support Herschel Walker, and he decides to go on a screed against high IQ stupid people. The stupider thing is that he actually has more to say about that topic. Take a look at this.
And these high IQ stupid people have an answer for everything. You know why? Because they think they're smarter and more virtuous than the American people. These woke, high IQ stupid people, they walk around with Ziploc bags of kale that they can eat to give them energy. Now, if you want to eat kale, that's up to you. I don't eat kale. You know why? Because kale tastes to me like I'd rather be fat.
Is he literally just doing bits of Jim Gaffigan routines at this point? Like, does he have so little to say in support of Herschel Walker that he's just sort of misremembering bits of comedy routines from Netflix at this point? He's still doing the kale thing and the weird concept that people would eat food to have energy. What do you eat food for, John Kennedy? That's what everybody eats food for. That's what food is. Anyway, I don't think that that's going to help Herschel Walker or honestly, at least that isn't Herschel Walker talking. So maybe it is better, Elise. What do you think?
This just reflects the little support that Herschel Walker has. It is indicative that he does not reflect the Georgian voters or just the people of Georgia at all, because there's no one in Georgia except for maybe a few that are going to resonate with this type of speech. And he's not speaking about the issues that Georgians want to hear about. And so that is purely the reason why I really feel like he's going to lose today.
Yeah. The closest he got to talking about an actual substantive issue was his reference to, if I heard him correctly, Dr. Zeus, the best pediatrician on Mount Olympus that I know of, at least. I don't know what's going on. And like, obviously access to food and fresh produce is important, but Mr. Potato Head isn't good enough. He's not nutritious, everybody. Okay, and really fast, respond. Martin says, John, you're falling prey to the plan. Look how we didn't get crushed, so now we will continue to do nothing for the people. Look, Martin, honestly, if you think that the fact that the Republicans didn't sweep the midterms means that I'm all of a sudden going to decide to stop being critical of the Democrats, well, please stay tuned because I'm going to surprise you. We're gonna continue to be very critical of the Democrats. I will remind you, I wasn't a Biden supporter. I liked a different guy in the 2020 race, by the way. Anyway, okay, but that said, thank you for the feedback as always. And with that, Elise, why don't we talk about some more news? What do you think?
Let's do it.
Unfortunately, it's kind of negative news. It is looking like the Supreme Court is going to rule that a Colorado graphic designer who has an issue with designing certain sorts of websites for same-sex couples, it looks like they're gonna rule in favor of that graphic designer. I wanna tell you about this case so that you're prepared for the ruling when it comes. The case concerns Lori Smith, who owns a design company that says it serves gay customers, but it intends to limit a proposed wedding-related service to celebrations of heterosexual unions. She argued that requiring her to provide those services to gay and lesbian couples violated her right to free speech. Colorado law forbids discrimination based on sexual orientation by businesses open to the public, as well as statements announcing such discrimination. Ms. Smith, who has not yet begun that wedding business or posted such a statement, for fear of running afoul of the law, sued to challenge it. Yeah, and like all of these, it's just about this individual person's actual beliefs. It's not like a stand-in for a conservative opposition to this sort of thing or whatever. Well, whatever, maybe she really believes it. Maybe she is losing sleep every night about the possibility that she might have to type in 2 male names next to each other rather than a male and a female name before clicking go live on a website. I don't know, maybe that's what she's actually concerned about. The important thing isn't really Lori Smith, it's the conservative supermajority in the Supreme Court that, regardless of whatever they might have tried to reassure us after destroying Roe v. Wade, they do seem like they want to destroy the right to same-sex marriage. That said, we want to give you a little bit of what some of the justices have been saying. Here's Brett Kavanaugh, who shouldn't even be on the court in the first place. He says, the case comes down to a fairly narrow question. Are they more like the restaurants and the jewelers and the tailors, or are they more like, the publishing houses and the other free speech analogs? Well, what do you think, Kavanaugh? A wedding announcement website, do you think it's the New York Post? Well, that's actually a bad example. What about maybe a real journalistic enterprise? Or do you think it's more like a wedding related service, like getting flowers or a cake or a macaroon tower or something? It's a temporary thing, it's a service for a wedding. But whatever, again, we can read a million of these statements. We'll read some more. They're not expressing real opinions. These are not, like, I don't know what people were taught about the Supreme Court and judges generally growing up. These are not angelic beings like free from sin who simply read the divine legal texts and then opine based on them. They're political people. They're gonna deliver political verdicts. But Elise, what do you think?
Yeah, this is again the walking the line between being a populist and being for the people you mask off, always support. I thought this was the party that's putting profit first and the economy first, except when it comes to we don't like gay people, so we're going to allow for discrimination against in regards to sexual orientation. So it's hypocrisy yet again, and I think that the majority of people, and tell me if the polls are wrong, but the majority of people don't want to discriminate based on sexual orientation. Business is business, and you can't discriminate based on race. We've established this decades ago. This is the same exact framework, same exact logic. We're applying it to orientation now. So
yeah, the last I saw, it was like a week ago. I think it was 71% nationally support, same-sex marriage. So look, it's not a divisive thing. I mean, sure, there's tens of millions of people who are entirely backwards, and I would say to them what I would say to Lori Smith, which is get a life. Jesus, seriously, like get a hobby, hang out with your friends, stop basing your life around trying to inconvenience people based on immutable characteristics of their life. That is what I would say. Like, honestly, why do you care? Why do you care? Just do your job. It's so simple to just do your job and to not, make this about trying to discriminate. And I'm also gonna say this, and this is where I just totally get into my own, personal opinions or whatever. And bear in mind, I'm an atheist. Although I went to church growing up and everything. They're saying it's her religious belief. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's your belief. And you're saying you believe that because you're religious. But plenty of Christians don't believe that. I don't think you're acting as if you're mandated. The reason they say religious belief rather than just belief is because it sounds better. It sounds bigger. It sounds more durable. It sounds more real. It's a belief. Who cares what aspect of your life or your interests or your hobbies you've linked to your belief? It's just your belief. You're not mandated by this. Clearly, the presence of a majority of Christians who are perfectly fine with same-sex marriage implies that you are not required by your religion to believe this thing. You just believe it and you say it's a religious thing. I believe we should adjudicate it in the same way that we would any other form of belief. Oh, it's my geographic belief. I was raised in southwestern Connecticut, and so that's just the way we believe. Nobody would say that because that doesn't sound cool. It doesn't sound convincing. If you were to say it's your culinary belief or it's your, I'm really into beach volleyball, so that's my belief. That's just a thing about you that you're linking to it. Again, justice is in the same way that the fact that I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut doesn't mean I have to believe a certain way. The fact that you're in a religious tradition that plays host to many different sorts of belief does not imply that you have to act a certain way based on your religion. And that's just my opinion. Elise being on the show shouldn't reflect anything on her religious beliefs or opinions. That's just what I think.
No, I'm also an atheist, but at the same time, so you can't just say that your belief is based on religion and then say whatever you want because of that. Like, a belief can be a bad belief and have it based on anything, and it's a bad opinion and it's a bad belief to want to discriminate against a group of people. And it really doesn't matter what your reasoning is. So I'm fully with you, John.
Yeah, I just don't think like, maybe I'm just sometimes, remember, I'm just a regular person or whatever. Like, I'm not even trying to confuse you into thinking that I'm something better by wearing a tie. Just a regular person. Maybe I'm being an a-hole, maybe I'm being contrarian, I don't know. We don't let people do things that are otherwise illegal because they're like, if you were to be like, it's my religious belief that I have to kill you, I'd be like, I don't give a damn that it's your religious belief. So what's the difference? Like, you should, if something is your religious belief and it's not infringing on anyone else, I believe that it should be protected. But I also believe that about every other form of belief. If you're not infringing on other people, it should be protected. Again, all of this is about civility. It's about having a society. And that means that both you should be free to do the things that don't hurt other people, and also that you should be stopped from doing the things that hurt other people, religious or otherwise. I'm just sick of this stuff being thrown on top of it that doesn't have anything to do with it. Anyway, so we'll see what ends up happening to the Supreme Court and say this same-sex ruling. And obviously, a lot of states have legalized it. There's the recent bill that's kind of weak sauce. It's moving through the Senate and everything. But anyway, and got some Republican support, so that's good. But anyway, we'll see. That said, I just want to move really quickly, and I apologize, I'm wasting a lot of time with my religious rants, but let's jump into this next video because this is just really weird.
If there's a black Santa at the other end of the mall, and he doesn't want to have his picture taken with a child who's dressed up in a Ku Klux Klan outfit, that black Santa has to do that?
No, because Ku Klux Klan outfits are not protected characteristics under public accommodation laws.
And presumably that would be the same Ku Klux Klan outfit, regardless whether if the child was black or white or any other characteristic.
And you do see a lot of black children in Ku Klux Klan outfits, right? All the time. Suppose that
everybody wants to be a comedian. I don't even know what point he's trying to make there. I mean, the actual point that Justice Alito was trying to make, again, as was pointed out by the person who responded to him, really seems to betray a fundamental misunderstanding about what sorts of characteristics are protected and what aren't protected. I don't believe that there's like a clothing protection, but I'm not a lawyer. He is a justice on the Supreme Court. One would hope that he would know that sort of thing. And then also might know that Justice Alito, being like really, really an old white guy, maybe doesn't need to make jokes about Black children and the Klan and stuff. Maybe a hearing before the Supreme Court isn't the proper forum for that sort of comedy. I don't know. Elise, what do you think?
Agreed. Of all of that.
Feel free to disagree.
Oh no, I
like
agree. It's just absolutely wild to me that 9 people have the decision to, that they're removed from the American people. They are not voted by the American people, and clearly one of them just seems to be completely out of touch with what we want. And I know this is like a very general statement. It can be applied to a lot of different issues, but like that really is the reality that I feel every single time a Supreme Court case comes up. It's just like, why are we relying on these people who are making jokes that are not funny to make decisions that are going to impact my life, impact, whether, if I marry a woman, I can, go into a shop and get a service. Like it's just baffles me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's impossible for us to divorce this fun philosophical conversation that they're having about rights and everything from the constant 24/7 onslaught by the right on the LGBTQ community. Like, I guess, some I think had been lulled into a belief that we had sort of adjudicated this already. But now just the ability to live as a member of one of these communities is being challenged in a variety of different forums. So not a fun thing to hear jokes about constantly necessarily. Okay, with that said, let's move quickly into this C block. Again, we're gonna get to more positive news, everybody. So I apologize that some of this is a little bit dark. Let's jump into this. A Mississippi man has pleaded guilty to burning a cross, and for, I guess, the worst reason, can't think of a good one, but specifically to intimidate his neighbors who are Black. He made the decision to put up a cross, to then burn it, so that he could terrify Black people who happen to live near him. This was not in the 30s. This happened just a couple of years ago, and you're seeing him there. And immediately when I saw that, I thought, yes, that checks out. Yes, that is the person who did that thing. 24-year-old Axel Cox admitted that he burned the cross because of the victim's race and because they were occupying a home next to his. If you need to know this, cross burning is considered a hate symbol that was popularized by the Ku Klux Klan, which, Justice Samuel Alito aside, is not a cause for joking. Cox was charged with violating the Fair Housing Act for trying to intimidate his neighbors in December 2020. He assembled a wooden cross in his yard and covered it with motor oil before lighting it on fire. The Assistant Attorney General had this to say about the case: burning a cross invokes the long and painful history, particularly in Mississippi, of intimidation and impending physical violence against Black people. The Department of Justice will continue to prosecute those who use racially motivated violence to drive people away from their homes or communities. He faces up to 10 years in prison now, a fine of up to $250,000. Dear God. Elise, what do you think?
I'm very worried about the state of our country and the violence that we're seeing constantly every single day that's inflicted on different marginalized communities, whether that's by the Supreme Court on LGBTQ plus people, or whether that's by individuals emboldened by GOP on Black and brown Americans. It seems to have, we seem to see stories like this every single day. And it seems like January 6th was a peak that I thought was going to, trickle down, that people would be held accountable. But no, we have, famous rappers that I once loved, encouraging this mindset. And then you have, former presidents who still are around and inciting violence. And, it really does impact the everyday person. And as a person of color, as a queer person, I I'm like shocked at how this country is turning out, and it is not sustainable this way. Like it's not going to phase and average into nothing and average into, we're all going to be peace and harmonious again. Like something has to happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's always going to be messed up people. It certainly does seem as if there's more of them and they're more emboldened. I mean, this guy was 22 when he did this, or give or take. Like we're how many months into the pandemic? And he's like, you know what I'm going to do? This is what I'm going to do. I don't understand it. By the way, I see in the chat someone was asking about why it is that they burn the cross, since of course they are Christians. One would think that they would like revere the cross or whatever. I actually really fast looked it up, and apparently they got the idea from a movie based on a book from decades and decades and decades ago, obviously. But I would assume it's not about destroying the cross. It's about using the idea of radical Christian might against these people, I think. Because remember, like in theory, most Christians want to, portray the church as a force just for good and acceptance and all that. But very often it has been tied to violence, including political violence. And I think this is one of the biggest demonstrations of that in recent times. Okay, with that said, we're gonna take our second break of the hour. When we come back, we have a little bit more positive news, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hold on, I gotta read this response super fast from Electric Arlen, who says, John, if you're still thinking about shaving to see what you look like, maybe try using the filter that shows what your face looks like without a beard before you commit to shaving. That's probably a good idea. I should probably look into that. Anyway, with that said, more news to get to. Let's jump into this video to start things off.
Good, I'm Deputy Chief of the Sheriff's Office. Stopped you because you driving tag or unregistered vehicle with no tag on it.
Is your camera on?
It is.
I'm the police chief in Tampa.
Oh, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm hoping that you'll just let us go tonight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll say. Now that you say you look familiar, so.
Yeah, I'm sure I do.
Okay. So, all right, folks. Well, have a good night. Staying over here in East Lake Woodlands.
We live in East Lake Woodlands.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, it's nice to meet you. So, I'm Deputy Jacoby.
Okay. Same here, my friend.
All right.
Take care of yourself.
All right.
Sorry
Take care.
to bother you.
All right. No worries. No worries. Like I say, we have a lot of problem with the golf carting around here. Everybody gets out.
We don't normally come out.
We never
the club
come
was
out.
closed,
We
so we
never,
went up to the Greek place to get some food.
All right, then we'll take care. And it was nice meeting you.
All right.
Oh, all right.
You ever need anything, call me.
Okay.
Serious.
All right. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours.
Thank you.
So, take care.
All right.
We got a good update. So that the joke will very much be on that incredibly smug police chief that you saw in that video there, Mary O'Connor. But I just want to briefly say, because we didn't initially cover this story before the update, that's as gross as anything I've seen in a long time. Like the entitlement in every gesture, every facial expression, every statement. They thank you for your service. No, you're not thanking him for his service. You're thanking him for the casual corruption where people in power get away with any petty little thing that they want by asking about whether the camera's on. And then when it is on, not caring, still going forward with the corruption. Like I'd prefer that this not be videotaped, but you know what? I'm gonna push through that concern and do it anyway. I'm the police chief, let me go. And in return, here's my card. Maybe if you need a little bit of help, I'll give you help. What sort of favor do you think might be called in on that? Anyway, the good update is that Mary O'Connor, pictured in that, the Tampa police chief, has resigned from her position after an internal affairs investigation. So that's good. It was videotaped, thank God, and we got consequences. That said, Elise, what do you think about what you just saw?
I'm surprised that there's a resignation because that really rarely happens. When it comes to police, there's just a culture of, we stick with our buddies. But it's good to know that in this case, there was a positive ending to it. And you just have to think at least my initial thought to myself is, how often does this happen in every single city and community in this country when it's not videotaped?
Yeah, 100%. And not just for the actual police chief, like their kids, their friends. I mean, the influence peddling to get away with it, whatever you want. And the cop instantly fell in the line. I thought I recognized you. Yeah, no, do whatever you want. If you'd like to shoot me, you can. You can just get away with it. Would you like to rob people in front of me? Instantly knew what she was doing, what his role in this interaction would be, and very smoothly and comfortably moved into that role. I don't know exactly what might, if anything, happen to that cop. And of course, by the way, I don't like his response, but that is a form of like abuse of power to obviously pressure your subordinate to do something. I would have loved for him to be like, oh, you're the police chief. Oh, well then you should have known better. I would have loved that, but that's probably not gonna happen because the clear implication is that if he doesn't comply, he could lose his job. So if I were him, I probably would have been terrified, by what was being implied there. I don't know, Elise, do you think he should have been braver despite that?
I think that in every case, yes, it'd be great if the, cops that are, on the ground are, sticking to what the rules are despite, who they're serving. But yeah, no, I don't blame a cop for, recognizing that this is technically their boss and, I have to act accordingly now because we know the police culture. Of course, police officers know the police culture and, the consequences of not, being friendly and making a switch as soon as you recognize you need to.
Yeah, just going along. Yeah, 100%. Anyway, we had a statement. How much time do we have time to get into the statement? I think we do. We had a statement from the mayor, Jane Castor, who says the Tampa Police Department has a code of conduct that includes high standards for ethical and professional behavior that apply to every member of our police force. As the chief of the police, you are not only to abide by and enforce those standards, but to also lead by example. That clearly did not happen in this case. It is unacceptable for any public employee, and especially the city's top law enforcement leader, to ask for special treatment because of their position. Public trust in Tampa's police department is paramount to our success as a city and community. Yeah, well, and more importantly, to do that sort of thing on tape. Because let's be clear, if there wasn't tape, there wouldn't be any consequences. First of all, we probably never would have heard about it, and you have to see it sometimes. I have read arguments against body cameras in some cases. There are some ways that it can potentially complicate certain types of investigations and all that. That said, and by the way, having videotape of clear illegal acts being committed is no guarantee of justice. That is very clear. But in many cases, we have only gotten justice because we were thankful enough to have it on tape. And I think this is 100% one of those cases. Any final thoughts, Elise, before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Any reform when it comes to police is something. But we just have to remember where the origins of policing came from. In the North, it's to dispel strikes. In the South, it was to catch enslaved people who were running away. And so that has trickled down 400 years later to today, and you can see that by how people police now. And so actual funding changes and institutional changes and priority changes is how we're going to actually see a reduction in police brutality. But yes, body camera is great for catching the crime when it happens.
100%. Okay, everybody, we are nearing the end of our first hour. I did want to recognize the amazing work being done as we speak on Twitch, where they're in a level 11 hype train. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to that. We're going to be recognizing some of your contributions more specifically in just a little bit. Again, as we close out this hour, I do want to remind people outside of the context of just our social breaks that we'll be doing live coverage of the Georgia Senate runoffs later on. This is an incredibly important election. I know that it might be easy to see it as not that consequential. After all, the Democrats do have control of the Senate, but institutionally it's important because 51 senators and 50 is not the same thing for control of committees and all that. It also allows them to potentially cancel out either Kyrsten Sinema or Joe Manchin potentially on some votes. But beyond that, symbolically, I think that this race is going to say a lot about what the American people will stand for in a candidate when it comes to Herschel Walker. So I'm going to be watching with a lot of interest, and hopefully you'll join us. That said, thank you everyone on the linear platforms of the podcast for listening and or watching. For those of you on other platforms, we've got a lot more to talk about in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.